Well, this is episode 6 of Ask Gordon, and I'm back in Washington, D.C. You can probably hear the plane going over me. That is, or not quite going over me, but it's right next to me, going into Reagan National Airport. Behind me, there, again, it's hard to see given kind of the perspective here, but that's the Jefferson Memorial behind me across the tidal basin. The water here, the water that you see is called the tidal basin. So that's the Jefferson Memorial right there. As I go across there, there's the Washington Monument. So the tidal basin is a beautiful place, especially during the Cherry Blossom Festival. If you haven't visited Washington, D.C., I think one of my favorite times to come here is during the Cherry Blossom Festival. All these trees behind me bloom. Again, if the weather cooperates, it doesn't freeze, while that bud is out. It is a beautiful sight to behold. So, and it's kind of before the heavy tourist season, but it's a great time to come to Washington, D.C. So, so this is episode 6 of Ask Gordon. And before I answer some questions, I actually just thought I'd give you a little bit of information. And the invitation, keep in mind that if you have any interest in walking the Camino, my invitation to be available to you, to help you prepare, to get you ready, or just to talk about it, that invitation remains open. It is, again, it's a great experience, and I wish everybody could do it. But so one of the things I'll share with you is when I told you that I knew I wanted to do this when my sister Gloria mentioned the Camino to me, and at the time I'd never heard of it before. So when I started reading about it, I knew immediately that I wanted to do it someday, but I didn't know when someday would be, because I needed the right team in place. I wouldn't be able to do it when I had an Eastern nephew out with me. So I didn't know when that would be. But last year, in 2017, I knew that the year was 2018. But, and then when I said, okay, when do I do it in 2018? As many of you know, I bleed red for Nebraska football. When you grow up in the state and there's such rich tradition, it doesn't matter that I'm a University of Virginia alumnus, and I love UVA. But I grew up with Nebraska football in my blood, and so that sticks with me. So to miss a football game is unheard of. I just don't want to miss a Nebraska football game. So I looked at the schedule, and I said, okay, I got to be back for the football game. Said, okay, I got to, I'll plan on flying back on this date. I kind of figured how much time I needed to walk. I built in some extra days, some free days, some flexible days, just in case I needed it for injury, for healing, for just a day off. So I built all that in, said, okay, this would be the date I need to depart. And so that's how I did it. If you don't have that type of, if you aren't crazy like I am, I think probably one of the better times to go would be when my friend Pete went, to go kind of that, begin on August 20th, begin kind of that latter half of August 20th. That means you'll be hiking there in the latter half of August and into September. It'll be cooler than when I did it by, you're basically a month behind me roughly. And, again, it's less rain likely, in that late summer and again in the summer. So that's probably the ideal time to do it. But again, I wanted to be back for Nebraska football. But like I said, the invitation remains to be open. So let's talk about the questions that you posed on the last video. I'm probably going to wrap up this album. Probably won't post too many more posts. I need to start going to my photos, and then I'll post what you'll see going forward here is probably mainly the photos that I, once I start reviewing photos. So this will most likely be the last episode for Ask Gordon, and I probably won't do too many more things, but I'll share a couple more things I know when they're ready. But I'll start winding down this photo album on Facebook. So a couple again, a couple of questions. Cindy asked, will I be on the Travel Channel or NBC? And that's, again, thank you for your sense of humor. I don't think I would be a good host on television. And Robin asked if I was going to do a 10X talk, and I don't think technically it meets the definition of a 10X talk. So I'm going to basically blow over those questions. So Oriana asked if there will be more trips like this in the future, and I'm going to joke and say there's nothing like the Camino. So technically the answer is no, because the Camino, well, there's probably some things similar to it. There's obviously, there's a lot of religious sites. Santiago, this has its roots in Christianity, certainly, although, again, you don't need to be a Christian to do this and get a lot from it. I met an atheist who, again, loved the Camino. So it's a great, it's a great experience. I can't attest to what other pilgrimages are like, but this was, in my mind, probably one of a kind. We went across Spain. So while the short answer is no, I do probably want to do more outdoor types of things, which will be again some of the national parks here in the United States, and there's things internationally that I'd like to do in the future. Sally asked, would I do it again? And so I'm going to answer that in two different ways. If I had to, if I knew then what I know now, would I do the Camino for the first time? And the answer is a definite yes. It is one of the best, if not the best experience of my life. That 35 days of walking and those free days on the Camino, learning about yourself, meeting some incredible people was incredible. Now, will I do it? The kind of a related question is, will I do the Camino multiple times? And I think the answer to that is probably no. There's met several people, as you may recall, that have hiked the Camino multiple times. I don't see myself doing that. I had again a great experience, and I'm going to relish that for the rest of my life. Bill asked, am I going to keep the beard? I've always been a person who basically felt like facial hair in the professional world wasn't appropriate. I know that probably certainly was the case, 30 years ago. I think facial hair is probably more acceptable. I probably am not going to keep it, although I'll confess that it looks better than I thought it would. But I still think I'm kind of a clean-shaven type of guy. And in the wealth management business, it still feels right to be clean-shaven. So I have it. It's kind of still to live in the moment of the Camino, to relish my Camino experience is the reason I have it. But it's probably coming off at some point here the week of Labor Day. Charlotte asked, what is the next adventure that you want to take? I don't have a bucket list, but I should probably start preparing a list. There's, again, a lot of outdoor related things here in the United States. I've done, I've hiked and stayed on the floor of the Grand Canyon multiple times. I've done the Havasupai Indian Reservation. I haven't seen a lot of our other great national parks, so I do want to see them. And there's things internationally I'd like to do. So what will the next one be? I'm not sure, but I probably need to begin planning on that to make sure that I can do it. I mentioned here during my preparation, I actually went out to Colorado for a conference, and it kind of reminded me of my youth, because when I was 14, I think it was, that I walked up Pikes Peak, and at the time, it was relatively easy. But when you grew up on a farm, you led a very active life, so it was easy. I suspect it would be far more of a challenge today at my age, just because it's in a different world. But that might be something I do. But there's national parks and things I want to do internationally. But I have not identified the next one. Janice asked if did I have any rain on the days you walked, or other adverse weather other than the heat? And when you threw the heat, I said the heat was the adverse weather. There was only one day that I wore the poncho while walking, technically, and that was on the second day, and it was a light drizzle for the morning, but it stopped, so I took it off. Never had any driving rain, so No, there was really no adverse weather that impacted. Obviously, if you go later times in the year, there was a gentleman that you may have met, a father's son. The father had tremendous blisters on this one and was sent home. He said he had done it, I think, in the May time frame a couple years earlier, and he said they actually had, the risk of hypothermia. So, but this was again no bad weather at all during this one. Linda asked, what is the one object you will take with you continuing on life's Camino? If it was a physical object, that pilgrim passport, that pilgrim credential, it has all the stamps that I collected along the way, much like you would if a traditional passport where you enter a country and they stamp it. That is a prized possession. I'm trying to determine how to display it with the shoelaces, the scallop shell, Santiago cross, so I'm trying to work on that. So that will be physically one of my prized objects. Otherwise I think it's going to be just I can't say enough about the memories of this thing and just the lessons. And nobody asked, I think, about the lessons. I'm still going to be reflecting. There's probably lessons I haven't really even thought about, but it's just the spirit, the gratitude is something that I hope to take with me for forever. Carol asked, do you think it is always going to be hard to go back to the fast pace of home? Do you think it is going to be hard to go back to the fast pace of home? And I've been home here now for a few days, and yeah, it's the transition. Again, I miss the Camino, so the transition hasn't been, well, it hasn't been hard, but again, it's not been, again, the Camino was just so unique that I hope I just don't get drugged back into the fast-paced life of DC, and I hope that I can take time to smell the roses, just appreciate the little things, again, some of the lessons along the way. So I want to make, again, walking more of a habit than I have in the past, and I do enjoy walking in outdoor parks and things like that, but I want to make that be more consistent with that. Esther asked, what do you think of the language barrier? And many of the people you met knew English. Was it a handicap to know only English? Fortunately, fortunately we do speak English, and that much of the world does speak English. So it was fine. There were times that it was difficult. I have the Google Translator, so I would use that at times, that little application. But fortunately, so as an American, you don't need to know Spanish to go over. You can still have a great experience. But I do wish that I knew Spanish. I wish that I'd taken a Spanish class along the way, or that I was somewhat fluent in the Spanish language. But it wasn't a handicap. And again, a lot of people I met along the trail did speak English. So thank God for that. Otherwise it could have been certainly more lonely. Karen asked, how will you strive to carry on your Camino journey after you return to Virginia? I'm gonna be very methodical. I'm gonna be continuing to do some reading about the Camino, reflecting on my experiences, looking at my notes, journaling, looking at the objects. Having the pilgrim passport will be a constant reminder. I bought those silver scallop shell cufflink that will be a reminder when I put that on when I wear a shirt that the cufflinks go with. So I want to be very purposeful about reflecting, about contemplating, about reading. There's some movies I want to watch, some documentaries just to help make me think about that, and start putting together notes and just see what's going to come from this, and see if there's a short book or anything. I don't know. So I'm going to be very purposeful about the life I lead and trying to continue to reflect on the Camino. So those are the questions that are asked. Like I said, this is going to probably be the last Ask Gordon episode, but my invitation, remains open. If you want to do it, I would be honored to talk to you about it. And again, for those of you locally in DC, I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk at some point about the experience. But I want to once again express my gratitude to my team for making this possible. Again, I wouldn't have been able to do this without them being in the office, taking care of clients, taking care of business, that arose. Obviously, want to thank our clients, because without them, Bernhardt Wealth Management wouldn't exist. Want to thank all of my friends in the DC area, outside the DC area, who have supported me along this journey. Your words of support, your likes on Facebook posts, have been meaningful to me. So I want to say thank you to you for that. Pete, I want to thank you for, again, we have a special bond now that we've both done the Camino. So I wish that I knew as much then as I know now when you had completed it, because this was just, kind of a fantasy when you had completed it. So I was living vicariously through you, and had I known kind of the power of it, would have been more, it would have been probably more interesting for me to be there for you when you came back. But I thank you for being there for me, as when I came back. So I'm just grateful to God for making this physically possible, that my body held up. My body was in good enough shape to undertake this, that my spirit remained strong, that my mind was positive throughout. So I have so much to be grateful for, and that's probably just, again, the one thing that I want to be continually focus upon, is just the gratitude for the little things in life, the gratitude for the people that come across my life. So thank you all so very much for participating with me on this journey. And like I said, I hope to see you soon, but God bless each and every one of you. And thank you very much.